Hey everybody, Andy Kvernen here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. Have you ever had somebody ask you a point-blank question that involved your responsibility for something that you wanted to avoid and you tried to deflect? In the Kvernen household, at least 4 out of the 5 of us often get asked a point-blank question about why dishes are left in the sink rather than put in the dishwasher. And often the answer is a deflection. Well, so-and-so put theirs in the sink, so did I. Or the dishwasher was full and I didn't have time to clean it out and put the clean dishes away, so I put my dishes in the sink. I was going to come back to it. Or I didn't know that there was empty room in the dishwasher. Whatever it is, we tend to deflect. And there's this great story in the book of John where Jesus encounters a Samaritan woman and he asks her for a drink of water. And then he says to her, look, if you knew who was asking, you'd ask me for water, because what I can give you is living water. You're never going to thirst again. And she says, well, give me some of this. And he says to her, well, go and call your husband and then come back and we'll see what happens. And here at this point, she starts to perceive that he's getting a little personal. She says, sir, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her in John 4:17, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. The woman's caught. And you can imagine the panic. She's just met this Jew, this man who's speaking to her, which is crazy in and of itself. And here he identifies this reality from her past that's quite shameful, that she wouldn't want him to know. And she does the natural thing. She deflects, right? In verse 19, she says, sir, the woman said, I can see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Our ancestors worshipped in Mount Gerizim. This is where the Samaritans worship. You Jews say Jerusalem. What do you think? How does she deflect Jesus' more personal, pointed observation? Well, she starts talking about culture wars. And in the first century Palestine, there was this opposition between Samaria and Jerusalem about who is right and where they ought to worship. The Samaritans contended that worship ought to happen on Mount Gerizim, and the Jews contended, rightly, that worship ought to happen in Jerusalem. This woman deflects away from her personal issues towards these more cultural issues. And I love Jesus' response here in verse 21. He says, woman, believe me, a time is coming when you'll worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. And he's making the observation, look, Gerizim is not the place to worship. You Samaritans are faulty in your thinking. You're short-sighted. He says, we worship what we do know, meaning the Jews. We have the truth in front of us, for salvation is from the Jews, says Jesus. Yet, and I love this, he says, yet, it's not about so much where you worship as who you worship. Listen to this. Yet a time is coming and is now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and truth. Will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they're the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. In other words, look, it doesn't matter so much whether you worship on Mount Gerizim in the time that is coming or in Jerusalem. What matters is that you worship in spirit and truth. How's that going to be possible? Well, listen to the woman's response to Jesus' word. The woman said, I know that the Messiah called Christ is coming, and when he comes, he'll explain everything to us. She's got an understanding here that's going the right direction, because then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. In other words, look, you're trying to deflect. You're trying to talk about Mount Gerizim or Jerusalem, but I'm the Messiah. And when I'm here, and because I'm here, it doesn't matter Gerizim or Jerusalem. What matters is that you accept who I am and what I bring. And so here this woman doesn't want to get personal. She wants to avoid this reality of Jesus understanding her dark past and her difficult decisions. But here Jesus says, look, what you need is not this cultural answer. What you need is me. And I can be the solution to your issues. And in fact, the woman goes and she tells everyone, and there's evidence that her life changes, that she accepts Jesus as he is. And in fact, she says in verse 39, he told me everything I ever did. And so when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them. The woman understands, look, this is the Messiah. And she turns to Jesus. She accepts Christ over culture war in the end. And friends, the question for us is the same. Are we going to to deflect? When the gospel gets too personal, are we going to try to say, well, what do you think about this, that, or the other thing? Those things that are out here, and maybe they're important. Certainly where people worshiped was important to God. God had given clear direction about this. And yet ultimately what matters most is, what are you going to do with Jesus? And that's my question for you today on the Cornerstone Connection, friends. What are you going to do with Jesus today? Are you going to accept him as he is, or are you going to accept him as you want him to be out there in the culture? Let me challenge you. Accept Jesus for who he is. He's the Messiah. He's the Savior. Trust him today.